This is Back to Back.
Yo, what's up, back-to-backers? This is Willy Joy. Welcome to the show. This is Back to Back. This is my podcast. How we doing out there? How we feeling? I hope everyone is doing well. I hope you had a good Halloween. I was seeing a lot of good costumes out there this year. I feel like we came together. I feel like we had some good ideas. It was executed well. Didn't see too many racist, questionable costumes. Maybe a little down from last year. That felt good. And now we're into November. We're into the home stretch of 2019. It's about to be 2020. Guys, it's about to be the future. And my guest this week, sometimes I feel like he can kind of see the future. I've got Blaise DeAngelo on the show. And if you don't immediately recognize that name, that's because Blaise has been working behind the scenes of the music industry for a long time. He was the label manager of OWSLA. If you've really been living under a rock, that's Skrillex's record label for many, many years. He stepped down from there a couple years back and has been running some really awesome ventures since then. He's got a project called Arete, which focuses on health and wellness in the music industry. He just started working with a new record label called Guin, which is putting out some really awesome hip-hop. Just getting started with that one. And he's doing so much more. We talk about this all in the chat you're about to hear. And I'll tell you more about how we met up in just a second. As usual, today I am psyched to talk to you about our sponsor. Back to Back is brought to you by Serato. And whether you've been in the game for a long time, like me, because I'm old, or if you just got into dance music in the last couple of years, I know you know Serato. They have been the DJ's best friend for the past decade plus, and they're continuing to innovate. Right now, they've got a new program out. This is for all my producers. It's called Serato Studio. Serato Studio is a brand new beat-making tool that helps you simplify the path to music production. And I've been playing around with it for a while now. It's a really great piece of software, whether you're an expert or a beginner. And no matter what your studio flow is, whatever your setup is, you can integrate Serato Studio seamlessly into that. You know, Serato Studio comes built in with tons of loops, effects, samples. And once I've got a project to where I want it, I just use the stem exporting feature they've got there. I bounce out the audio from my project, and then I've got the audio files that I can bring into Ableton, which is what I use as my main production software. But no matter what your setup is, Serato Studio, man, it's just a great tool to add to your arsenal. And right now, we're running a special promotion with Serato. This is available only to listeners of this show. If you go grab Serato Studio and enter promo code WillyJoy2 at checkout, you get 2 months free of Serato Studio. That's a crazy amount of time, no obligation to you. You got nothing to lose. So go check them out at serato.com/studio and use promo code WillyJoy2 at checkout to get 2 free months of Serato Studio. That's serato.com/studio. So, for this conversation I had with my old friend, Blaise DeAngelo, this was kind of funny how it happened. I met Blaise at his place out in Venice in California. This was the very last thing I did on my last trip to LA. And I mean very last. I actually had to cut the interview a couple minutes short because I literally had to run to the airport or I was going to miss my flight. And what's even weirder about this is that Blaise had just come from the airport. He had just gotten off a flight from Germany like an hour before I showed up. So we were ships in the night. We were both a little loopy. But I just love talking to him. We locked in right away. He's one of the most interesting people I know. And if you're a longtime listener of this show, you might remember I did a mental health panel over at Icon Collective with people like Getter, Flostradamus, and Blaise was another person on that panel. We put that out as a 2-part episode about a year ago, so go back and check that one out if you haven't already. Blaise was amazing there, and since then I've always known I had to get get him back for a full episode. He's a really inspirational guy. He's just one of those people that, to use a cliche, I think really sees through the matrix, sees through a lot of the surface level stuff that goes on in the music industry that we all deal with. But he's able to just sort of cut to the heart of everything, focus on what's really important, and he's always a couple steps ahead. I think that's why he was so effective as the label manager for OWSLA for so many years. I mean, he was at the helm from the very start of that label when nobody even really knew who Skrillex was, what OWSLA was, all the way through the peak when they were one of the top labels in dance music. And he went on to do some really incredible work focusing on taking care of artists, making sure that what we all do is sustainable, that we know how to be healthy while we're doing it. He's an artist in his own right, an amazing DJ, and this was a long time coming, man. I'm just glad we got to do it. Let's get into it right now. Shout out to everybody out there supporting the show, by the way, spreading the word. If you like this week's episode, put up a story, put up a tweet, tag me. I'm going to see it. I'm going to repost it. I'm going to reply to you. We'll talk. We'll connect. That's my favorite part of doing this every single week, no lie. But right now, we're going to get into it. This is me and Blaise DeAngelo back to back. Let's go.
This blend right here, you see, this improves your circulation.
Okay.
That's that stuff that keeps your blood flowing.
You've been having circulation issues?
Well, it's funny when you look at, when you get into like Eastern alternative sorts of medicine, Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, things like that, they look at everything like it's a circulatory issue. Everything for them is about, the blood flow, the flow of qi in the body. And most, all acupuncture really does is it focuses the flow of blood to a specific area or a specific channel. So yeah, like if you, everything's super simple when you look at it through traditional Chinese medicine. It's all just about like your flow of energy and your blood flow. And if your circulation is really good, your body's pretty naturally able to sort of defend itself against things that would otherwise get you sick.
Yeah, I'm so ignorant about a lot of Eastern medicine. And like I'm aware of it, that it exists, and I'm aware of, kind of the theory behind it, but have not tried a ton. And then when I hear people say things like that, which sounds very logical, I'm like, yeah, I should probably do that.
Man, it's cool. I got into it. I got into Chinese medicine because I've always had lifelong allergies. Like I was always taking Zyrtec and Allegra over-the-counter stuff as a kid, like, getting a lot of sinus infections and like sneezing and coughing and all that. And Western medicine doesn't really know shit about dealing with that. They just give you stuff to, Band-Aid it. And Chinese medicine, Eastern stuff is actually really good for that kind of stuff, like draining pain, inflammation, back pain, problems sleeping, sinus issues, like really, really effective. But it's not delivered in a way people are used to. So, for example, acupuncture, you won't notice anything right away. It's very subtle.
Right.
It's more about strengthening the organs so they're good for the long run. And we're very used to like taking a thing and immediately feeling better.
I think too, because not that Eastern medicine hasn't been studied or hasn't been scientifically proven, but because there's maybe more of a spiritual component.
Yes, it's crazy. There's things that Chinese medicine has known for 5,000 years that Western medicine still hasn't figured out. But it's like you said, it's science. Science has this authoritative sort of stamp, right? Is that scientific? Are there scientific, is there scientific research to back that? When I'm not discounting science. Obviously, science is science. But so much science can be bullshit too,
Well, and science, by its very nature, is always evolving and learning. There's things that we thought were true 100 years ago that now we find out, well, actually, the truth is slightly different, and we were just sort of on the path to figuring out the actual way it worked,
And then there's the political slant of science, right? So I was home for Christmas this year, and my dad came in. My dad's like the junk food head of the family, right?
Yeah.
So we're always riding him about like drinking soda and stuff. So he comes in one day and he's like, oh, there's this article from this Harvard professor saying that coconut oil is basically like poison. Like, what do you guys think about that? You coconut oil eaters? Like, how do I look now with my Coca-Cola? And I'm like, without even looking at the article, I said, Dad, before I even open my computer to look at this, I'm going to bet you that this article was funded by someone who has interests contrary to the fat industry.
Yeah.
And I'm going to also bet you that there's a study that I can find that says the opposite thing. And sure enough, I went on there and I found that that study was indeed funded by the sugar industry, who has been since the 50s in basically a cold war with the fats industry, shifting the blame about who's responsible for things like heart disease. So they each just pay, fancy Ivy League schools to research a thing to come out in their favor and publish a study in the New York Times. And it's all just financially motivated.
Yeah, it's true. My mom is a doctor, and one of her biggest complaints over her entire career, she's retired now, but it was sort of the pharmaceutical lobbies and how much money they would just throw at doctors to prescribe the things they like, or they would take a doctor on a fancy trip for a week, sort of under the guise of a retreat, but they're also kind of talking about their products.
Right.
And my mom ended up feeling like it was a very predatory thing, and that she couldn't trust a lot of these quote unquote studies that in the past kind of she had entered the medical industry believing, right? And it's a weird thing. And I do want to say too, I mean, it's also very specific to the individual, right? Because for me, I mean, there's a lot of Western medicine that I'm very stoked about. And I think a lot of progress being made. Like, I don't think it's sort of, we picked the wrong one. You know what I mean?
No.
But I do think, probably like you said, because so much money is involved in Western medicine, that it's almost profitable for them to keep other ideas out.
Yeah. You know what, though? I will say, and I've not heard a decent comeback from this yet, so maybe you'll be the first, but...
Hit me.
You believe in love, right?
Sure.
Where's the science behind that?
Well, I mean, you're right. They haven't figured it out, but I feel like there are people working on it.
There's definitely people working on it.
Yeah.
Definitely people working on it. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, you know how it feels, and yet it's this all-pervading force that kind of makes the world go around.
Right.
But, can it be proven? No. Can chi be measured? No.
Right.
But,
well, and I think, again, it's the individual. Like, there's some people who have certain treatments or similar issues to issues I have, whether it's like, oh, my knee hurts, or oh, my neck is sore, and I'll talk to someone else and they'll say, oh, what's great for that is XYZ, and then I'll try it and I'm like, that's
right.
Terrible. Anytime someone talks about what works for them, I used to be way more judgy than I am now.
Yeah.
And now I'm just like, yeah, that's cool, man. And, if I try it out and it's for me, that's cool. But I don't know. I look at it much more as like a personal journey at this point.
This is you're spot on. And this is a very limiting belief that I think causes a lot of conflict and disagreement and confusion among people. And it's also why you see every other week the headlines are, coffee's good for you, next month it's bad for you, now it's back to being good for you, now it's bad for you. I think what most people fail to grasp is individuals have individual constitutions.
Right.
And they have predispositions to things and susceptibilities to things. Me and my dad, you'd think we'd be very similar. My dad has what Chinese medicine would call a very strong constitution, right? So his whole life, he drinks soda every day. His diet basically consists of red meat, pasta, cheese, and sugar. And he never gets sick. I mean, like maybe twice in my life have I seen him sick. Never gets sick, never misses a day at work. Every day he jogs, he swims. He's 64. He still has all of his hair. He still has abs.
Amazing.
And yet my mom, complete opposite. She spent most of her life like barely eating because she gets, she'll get nauseous from something as innocuous as an avocado.
Right.
She has a very weak, sensitive constitution, and I'm, somewhere in the middle. So sometimes it's really hard for my dad and I to understand or be on the same page about why a certain thing is important or what it does. And I think when people are having conversations like this, they're very eager to like, oh, this thing worked for me, so do it.
Right.
And it doesn't work for the other person. It doesn't mean that person's a liar. It just means everyone's different.
This is fun, man. These podcasts almost never start with conversations like this.
I geek out on this stuff. And this
I know you do.
This is when I started learning about this stuff, the first inclination I had was, how can I use this to support the arts?
Right.
How can that's the community that I come from. That's, the world that I live in. So when I first, went to India and did an Ayurvedic retreat, and when I first started meditation, and we'll talk all about this stuff, but the very first inclination was, my first idea was, I need to start managing these doctors, and I need to start bringing them to the US, and I can actually help people that way. I can help people get the care and the service that they don't even know that they need, and I can help spread these ideals that aren't really being popularized.
That's such a funny music industry idea of like, I should manage these doctors.
How can I insert myself in between the money changing hands? So the money has to pass through my hands first. Yeah. No, I
love that.
I did not do that wisely.
But wait, when was that approximately when you started getting interested in this stuff?
2014, I started, or maybe the very beginning of 2015, I learned transcendental meditation.
Okay. So this is when you were kind of in the middle of OWSLA stuff, right? Like peak OWSLA?
Bro, learning transcendental meditation is like a big deal. Like you have to abstain from all alcohol and drugs and mind-altering substances for 2 weeks, eat a pretty clean diet, and then the learning itself happens for a few hours a day over the course of 4 days.
Okay.
My first day was the morning after the infamous 24-hour Jack U live stream party.
Oh, right. So
when the Jack U EP came out.
Right. And for the people who don't know, Jack U, Diplo, Skrillex released this EP and did exactly what Blaise just said, a 24-hour live stream where they more or less, they didn't actually DJ for 24 hours, but they DJ'd a really long time.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a legendary moment, man. If you really like look back at the history of our little scene, that's definitely...
That was a pillar for sure.
Yeah.
They had circus animals driving cars. People were getting tattoos. Girls were upside down everywhere. It was... And I was kind of like working, like, helping run the event, but also had to stay completely sober because I was starting meditation the next day. I ended up getting in a really bad fight with the girl I was dating at the time because I was so cranky having to stay up all night and be sober and deal with all this. And we were supposed to start learning meditation together as a couple. Yeah. And I showed up the next day to the class and she wasn't there. And they totally thought I tried to scam them for the couples discount by bringing like a fake girlfriend to the first meeting. Funny. And then she's not here a week later.
And you're like, oh, sorry, she broke up with me.
Yeah, no, we had a fight at the Jack U party because I was sober because I was learning to meditate.
Wow.
But yeah, if you call that smack in the middle of the
That's pretty much right in the middle, yeah.
And shout out to Catherine Frazier. I think most people in the industry know Catherine Frazier from Biz 3. She was the one who really put me onto this. On one of our long drives out to Malibu, I was just telling her about, I couldn't really describe the feelings as articulately at the time, but I just knew that my mind was often moving really fast and I often felt really stressed and really kind of physically weighed down by the stress. And she put me onto TM. And it's probably the single greatest thing I've learned or done with my life. By far the most important, skill or thing that I've learned and probably the most special gift anyone's maybe ever given me.
Really? If you're able to sort of distill down really like the super basic level of what changed for you once you got into it, what would that be?
So the first thing that comes to mind is I remember I've always been a huge fan of Kobe Bryant. We had the same birthday, actually.
Okay.
He's exactly 10 years older than me. I met him when he was a rookie before he was even playing.
Oh, wow.
And he stopped and talked to me 20 minutes, told me to stay in school. Really nice guy, class act.
Wow.
And then he also became really good. So I'm a fan of this guy. And I remember an old interview where he was saying that they were asking him about that game where he put up 81 against the Knicks, I think.
Okay.
I think it was the Knicks. And he's like, yeah, everything was just clicking. I was just so focused that game. It felt like a chess game where I could see 4 moves ahead. It felt like everybody else was moving in slow motion, but I wasn't. And that's probably the best way that I could describe how things changed. And things changed immediately.
Really?
Things changed with the very first meditation. The very first one that I did, I transcended, as they call it. I felt, I call it the Jing from one of my favorite movies, Rules of Attraction. If anyone is listening to this and knows that movie, they'll be like, oh snap, he's talking about the Jing. I felt it the very first time, and the effect was immediate, so much so, and tangible, and so much so to, immediately hook me. And it just really felt, it wasn't just my daily life. Like, I became a better DJ.
Oh, wow.
Because it felt like I could see ahead in the mixes. It felt like I could connect better with the people. I was more present. I wasn't thinking about like, oh man, like I need to really like impress this crowd, or I wasn't, because even when you're DJing, there's thoughts going through your mind, man.
Of course.
Like you still had, maybe you had a shitty day, or maybe have to take a shit, or something that doesn't involve shit. Maybe something totally unrelated.
Absolutely.
You had a fight with your girlfriend.
Yep.
And it just helped calm all that. It helped quiet all that. So I became a better friend, a better conversationalist, a better DJ, a better listener, and just a better like participant in the world.
Man, that's amazing. Shout out to Catherine Frazier.
Yes.
Definitely.
You know Catherine.
I do, not as well as I'd like to. We've never had like that one conversation, you know what I mean? I've met her in passing a million times.
You're both from Chicago, right?
That's right. Yeah. And so I knew her a little back then, and I've seen her a few times out here, but it's always, ships in the night kind of thing.
You should totally get her for this podcast.
I really want to.
So just on the plane today, I saw she just did an interview, a podcast for the Transcendental Meditation podcast.
Oh, wow.
So she's still doing Biz 3, and she's still crushing as a publicist, but she's now also a certified life coach for at least a year now. So she, I think, realized that she was just having a lot of these spiritually, personally, life-driven conversations with a lot of her clients. And I think it just really sparked something in her that she really enjoyed it. And I don't know how she does it. She's got 2 kids. She's a high-powered ass publicist. Yeah, for some of the biggest artists in the world. Found time to work in these night classes to become a life coach. And now she, I've taken life coaching classes with her. She's really great, and she understands the nuances of being an artist and working in the music industry. So, yeah. Yeah, she's powerful, man. She's really a force. I think she's one of those people where the first couple times I met her, and I confirmed this with other people the first time they meet her, she seems very intimidating because she's just such a powerful... And she's tall. She's very tall. She wears a lot of black, large rings. Yes, that too. Physically, just the appearance is intimidating, but the presence too, a little bit. She doesn't fuck around. Yeah, no, she's no joke. Absolutely. But then if you get to talk to her a little bit, there's so much depth, and all of that intimidation, at least for me, went away really quickly, and I was more just kind of fascinated by her. And maybe this is a good way to get into. Talk about how you met her and how that whole part of your life opened up. Oh man, it's kind of funny. 2012, I was working at Groove Shark. Any heads listening, they're probably like, "Oh snap, he's talking about Groove Shark." I was about to say, because does that exist anymore? No, hell no. Yeah. And just because there's also people who don't know, what was Groove Shark at the time? Groove Shark was, in hindsight, a social experiment to expose all of the underlying political bullshit that underscores the industry. Well, when you put it like that, I can't see why it failed. Groove Shark was a brilliant idea for a streaming service that was basically YouTube and Spotify before Spotify even came to the US, and before YouTube really hit ubiquity as a music streaming service, when it was still like people uploading videos of their cats. Groove Shark was a very smart idea to create a centralized platform for user-generated content that was free, started by 21-year-old University of Florida dropouts that eventually amassed 30 million users around the world. And I have to be careful what I say on this podcast but they ended up facing a lot of legal challenges from the major labels, which it would be hard not to chalk up to the fact that their main competitor, Spotify, was about to enter the US market and just so happens to be owned 49% by those major labels. So it wasn't a great time to be Groove Shark. Right. And for what it's worth, politically, I think Groove Shark also, it was this young punk kind of rebellious kind of spirit, right?
Yep.
The oldest person at the company might have been like 27. And so we were all kind of like, yeah, fuck that. Like, fuck you guys. The industry's broken. Like, we're going to fix it.
Right.
Like, this system's whack. Like, we're going to change it, And it was very like beautifully naive.
Yeah, I actually really like that.
But at the same time, like, they did not compromise their morals. Like, they did not sell out to the majors. They did not cave in. They said, no, we believe that the data from these streams should be accessible for free to the artists. And we believe that you can use this data to more intelligently market your music to artists. And all these things are happening now, today. But they just didn't go about it the right way. They didn't shake the right hands and kiss the right asses. So Groove Shark is now history. But for me, it was an incredible opportunity to get basically a crash course in the music business while getting somehow paid to do so. At a time in the music, at a post-Napster time in the music industry where it was very much a wild, wild west.
Yeah.
A lot of people were still file sharing.
Yeah. I was,
Some people still had CDs.
Yeah.
And no, I mean, Spotify, again, hadn't even came to America yet.
Right.
So there was no streaming giant. Streaming was still like a big bet.
Yeah.
Streaming was like, everyone's saying the streaming thing is going to like be a big thing.
Isn't it funny to think back to those times, man? Because I know just as many people who are like, that's just a fad. That'll never.
Yeah, it was like a big risk.
Right.
It was like a big bet people were taking on streaming. So yeah, it was interesting for me at this time to get to see how the industry really worked and to see the good, the bad, and the ugly underbelly of the music industry, but also be inspired by how artists, I mean, I remember in the Groove Shark days, like I was working with Porter Robinson, I was working with Diplo, I was working with G-Eazy before anyone knew who he was. I remember my boss laughed at me because he's like, really, G-Eazy, this is your guy? You made this guy up. This sounds like a made up rapper. And just showing them, hey, like we can tell you how many people listen to your music and what percent of them skipped it and what percent of them also like Family Guy. And like this might help you market yourself to brands or better understand your audience or route your tours or things like that.
Yeah. Did you have any, artist experiences, artist partners like that where you think you really helped them or affected their career? Did you get any feedback like that?
It's the perfect question. You don't even know you asked it, but you just asked the perfect question.
That's what I'm here for, baby.
Because that's how I got into meeting Catherine Frazier.
Boom.
So one fine day, I was the only dance kid at Groove Shark. Everyone else was into like punk and ska and indie, and I was really into dance music. And so I was like the default like resident person who would talk to the DJs. So I became friends with Aaron Green and Neil O'Connor from Slush Management, who were managing a young kid named Porter Robinson. And they were really good managers because they were really open-minded and they were really looking to find new ways to promote Porter. And I ended up going out to Snowball Fest in Vail, Colorado to meet with them and tell them about Groove Shark. And this was sometime like early summer 2012, I think. Sonny had just launched OWSLA. And I didn't know this at the time. I wasn't at the time super familiar with Skrillex or OWSLA or any of that.
Sure.
I knew Porter Robinson. And so I went and met with them. And they said, okay, well, we've got this EP coming out. His first big EP with this guy Skrillex's new label. It's going to launch Skrillex's new label called OWSLA. And I somehow talked them into giving Groove Shark a 48-hour pre-release exclusive of the EP. So, fun story, the very first place you could hear the very first OWSLA release ever was Groove Shark.
Oh, that's so crazy.
And then, in exchange, we gave them a big, site takeover and a bunch of free, advertising and promotional impressions and things like that. So a few months later, it was probably like 9 months later. Sorry, this was 2011.
Okay.
That was 2011 because that's when Spitfire came out. Fast forward through the winter into like spring of 2012. And I was trying to move out to LA. I was trying to get out of Florida. And
what part of Florida were you in?
We were in Gainesville, where the University of Florida is. That's where all the dropouts basically just started running Groove Shark.
Okay.
They were just recruiting like engineer talent straight out of UF.
Oh, nice.
And I was DJing there like 4 or 5 nights a week, and I was working at Groove Shark, but I really just felt like I needed to get into like a bigger pond and be like a small fish in a big pond and grow that way. The person who was running my team at the time, he left. And he knew that I was looking to get to LA. And so one day I just get a call that's like, hey, you want to be a label manager of OWSLA? And I was like, fuck yeah, like anything to get me out of LA. I had no idea at the time, like what an amazing opportunity I was kind of falling into.
Yeah. Do you know what made them think of you in particular?
Well, so shout out Mike Feinberg. He was heading my team at Groove Shark, and he had known Tim and Sonny for a long time. Mike's an OG from Florida. Mike like helped start Dim Mak with Steve and like opened a lot of the hard rock cafes in the South and was just kind of a big pillar in the Orlando and Florida scene. And Mike had known Tim and Sonny for a while, and I think they had probably told him they were looking for someone young.
Okay.
Because if you look at the way Sonny does things, it's very anti-establishment. You know? And
yes.
So I think they very much didn't want to be just like working with people who were ingrained in the same old traditional ways of thinking. So I thought it was a detriment coming in. I was 23 when I interviewed with him. I didn't even know what a label manager was.
Right.
So I thought that was a detriment, but it turned out later that they actually really liked, I think, that I was young.
Sure.
I imagine that it was because they thought, okay, well, we can teach him the basics, but like the hunger, that's the stuff you can't teach.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So that led to... So Mike Feinberg left Groove Shark. I told him I wanted to leave. A couple months later, I got a call. Within like 2 days, I was driving over to Starbucks in Gainesville, Florida to meet Tim Smith, Sonny's manager, who lived there at the time. Probably only legitimate person in the music industry that lived in Gainesville, Florida.
One, what a crazy connection that you were already physically close by.
Yeah, I'm sure he was also equally surprised that I was also in Gainesville.
Right.
So we went over there, and I guess he liked me enough to put me on a plane a few days later to go to New Jersey, where Sonny was playing Bamboozle Fest. And I, had a little bit of like an impromptu hang with him there. I like to tell the story that I'm pretty much sure I just got the job because he needed an aux cable and I had one in my backpack. So he's like, all right, keep that kid around. He's got cables.
Yeah, he's there when you need him.
Someone actually brought me, I can't remember. I did a panel, I think it was like ADE or something, South by Southwest maybe, and I told that story. And 2 years later, I was doing interviews for an assistant, and someone showed up to the interview with an aux cable.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, what? He's like, I have a gift for you. And I was like, what's the, why? I don't get it. He's like, you said that you got hired by Sonny because you brought him an aux cable. I brought you an aux cable.
Oh, man. That's such a deep cut. I love that.
I was so blown away.
That's incredible.
So I had the aux cable and whatever. They hired me because I had an aux cable. And then the next day, I was on a plane to Chicago to go meet Catherine, who was like the final boss of the game that I had to defeat.
Right.
And I was so tired when I got there. I like went to her back porch and took a nap. And she like woke me up, like poking me with a stick. Her and Clayton, who was working there at the time too. And she's like, wake up, we want to hire you. When can you start?
That's amazing. Well, I loved the vibes back then too, because like we said, I was in Chicago at the same time Catherine was there and was like really building up Biz 3. And I wasn't that connected with them at the time, but I would always hear stories of, I came to town, I slept at Catherine's house / office / whatever.
Yeah.
And there was another guy on the couch who ended up being Clayton.
Yeah.
And Clayton and I actually share a mutual friend from way, way, way back, like a different part of my life. And this is a regret of mine. I'm still trying to get Clayton on the show, but right when Clayton came to Chicago, she hit me up, our mutual friend, and she was like, hey, my friend Clayton is coming. He doesn't know a lot of people. You guys would really get along. Like I want to make you guys friends.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, that's cool. But I just didn't, follow up enough. And then by the time he and I actually started crossing paths, it was sort of like we were already in different lives, I
could see you guys being good friends.
Yeah. And I love him. He's great. But I just feel like had we met at that time, which I dropped the ball on, we maybe would have been closer. I just like that guy.
Yeah, man, you should definitely have one. He was over here like a month ago. We went for a beach walk.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, he's doing all kinds of crazy stuff with the blockchain now. And
yeah, he just started like a music for charity company or service. Did you hear about this?
I know. Was it related to the piece he just did in Complex?
No, I think this is different, but that piece is fucking amazing.
I don't know about this then.
Well, I'm probably not, Clayton, I'm so sorry because I'm about to butcher your really good idea.
We're leaking your whole business model, bro.
Oh, it's public. He's posting about it, but I'm just going to do a bad job describing it. But I think it's basically a record label for charity. So it's like they will release and distribute and promote your song, but the proceeds go to a cause, more or less.
That's very interesting. I want to talk about the new label I'm working on.
Yes.
Because it's very similar. Bookmark that.
Yeah, it's bookmark, man.
Social causes.
Yes. But no, the Chicago days were fun. And it's funny because right around that time, also, I have this concrete memory. I said this when we did the mental health panel together, and I don't think you remember this, but I have this clear memory of you were driving from Florida to LA to start your OWSLA life. And I was in Chicago, and one night we ended up in a green room together at the Mid in Chicago.
Of course I remember.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm thinking of something else. But for whatever reason, you and I had a long talk that night in the green room.
Yeah.
And I just remember, I don't remember how we knew each other already, because we had met somewhere, or at least talked online. But then my impression was just like, oh, this young guy is he's driving across the country. I was like, who is this guy? And you were so excited and full of ideas. And it just seemed like this was a really cool time in your life.
Oh man, it was.
And it was cool to just get that little window of it. And then I wouldn't see you again until a whole different phase.
Yeah. I do remember that night, and I was thinking about that before you were coming over today. I remember it wasn't even a green room. I remember it being like some kind of kitchen area of the Mid. There was
so the kitchen was right next to the green room.
Yeah. And so I think Sonny must have been playing there that night.
Probably.
Because I actually never drove across the country.
Oh, okay.
I like a little EDM brat, I shipped my car to LA and I went to EDC Vegas and then I went to LA.
Amazing. So wait, what were you doing in Chicago then?
I would imagine that I was there because Sonny had a show. I don't know if that was before I moved to LA or if that was just after I had moved to LA.
It was definitely, I remember you talking that you were moving to LA.
So it's probably right before that. Yeah. Perhaps it was the night after I woke up on Catherine Frazier's couch.
Yeah, actually that would make a lot of sense. Yeah, because I remember it was very new. You had not really gotten into it yet.
There was this honeymoon period when I first moved to LA. It was one of the happiest times of my life. I was living by the motto, just say yes to everything. And when you're in LA, there's always something to say yes to.
That's true.
No, I didn't get into any really bad stuff, but just going out there's always a show, there's always a party, there's always a concert.
Yep.
And I was living in the arts district, so most of those things were walking distance. And it was really cool because the whole crew all also lived in that neighborhood. And it was also early beginnings of everything. I remember going to the OWSLA office and building my desk, and it was just me and Clayton.
Right.
And I remember being locked out for the first hour because everyone was coming back from EDC Vegas and no one was even there to open the office.
Amazing.
And then I built my desk and it was me and Clayton and then a few other people, and we got some furniture. And
that sounds like a really fun time, man.
It was a really fun time, and it was a great time. And you know what though? I always caution people now. I use that example because it was an amazing time, that 6 months, because I was so excited. I had been my whole life wanted to move to LA. A lot of things were starting to happen, and it was exciting. And I didn't even really realize at the time, OWSLA was still really small, and I didn't really realize until I got to LA and things started picking up what an important sort of responsibility this was going to be for me. I was just excited to be in LA, but what I always tell people is moving to LA, or even just being in LA, because no one told me, LA is LA. It's one of the biggest, most cutthroat places in the world.
Yeah.
And it's one of the biggest. I don't mean that in a negative or harsh way. It's one of the biggest stages in the world. It's just one of the highest levels.
You got to be ready for it.
It's no joke. It's LA, and no one really gave me any kind of talk about any of this stuff. So I was just loving life, doing my thing, and I think after a while, at least for me. Again, no one told me this. Now in hindsight, I have the perspective, but it's people come here from all over the world. People who are really good at what they do. And often they're the big fish in their small pond where they come from. Mm-hmm. And they all move here to try to make something, try to grow, become even better. So at all times, you're surrounded by people doing amazing shit. And the key is to just frame it in a way that it inspires you. Right. But no one really warned me. And I think I've always been a bit predisposed to being a perfectionist and being really hard on myself and definitely comparing myself to other people. And that last one, I'm sure, is something that almost everyone can relate to. And when you're comparing yourself to other people and you live in LA, it's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
Right? Because first of all, everyone's putting out their best self.
Yes.
You never see the real story. People drive nice cars, but then they basically don't have an apartment to park them at.
Right.
So there was a period following that of a couple years of just kind of like grappling with, you know, who am I? What makes me happy? What do I want out of life? And it was also a time where I was at a very young age, had attained things that I think a lot of people spend all of their 20s and 30s working for, like a stable job with a good income and, you know, a career path that affords them, you know, self-expression and respect and opportunities for all sorts of growth. And it was just, so very quickly I went from like, oh my God, I'm finally living in LA, living out my dreams, to like, okay, now what?
Right.
And why am I so depressed? And it's like I was depressed all the time, but there definitely would be times where I wasn't working and I was just alone with my thoughts.
Right. What's that funny thing, right, where you work so hard and think so much about one defining success, right, or one goal, and then finally you get it, and then you feel exactly the same.
Yeah.
You know? That's a weird moment.
Yeah, and that was also a lesson that I'm really grateful for, right? Because I got to attain, or at least be in proximity to, a lot of the things that most people in and out of the music industry work and gear their entire lives to.
Right.
Dedicate their entire lives to, like, one day I'll be able to, like, you know, do this, like go to that country, or like, you know, have a big party like this, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I got to see, not that like I was living an extremely lavish lifestyle at like 26. I mean, things could have been worse, but also just being in proximity to things, seeing, you know, things that most people wouldn't witness or experience in their lifetime being common occurrences to me, kind of normalized them and made me see these things are not that big of a deal. You're still the same person before and after you ride in a helicopter.
Right. Or
you come back down and you still have the same shit going through your head.
Yeah. Or when you hang out with a celebrity, or
or when you are a celebrity.
Sure.
You know?
Sure.
It doesn't get any easier or better.
Yeah.
It's you know, the happiness is a place within, and I'm really, really so lucky that I got to learn that in my 20s and not like in my 50s after like structuring my entire life around chasing those material things.
Yeah, man. And we both definitely know people who are still trapped in that, you know, and it's one of those things too. I think as you get older, the people who are in that mindset get easier to spot. You know? And probably because, you know, at least speaking for myself, because I can see pieces of the way I probably used to be in those people, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just a weird moment. I mean, I'm curious for you, you know, so you get to LA, you're the label manager of OWSLA, you know, arguably the hottest name at the time, like super on top of the world. What did you want for yourself? Like, because you came in as a DJ first, right?
Yeah.
Did you see yourself, before you got there, did you see yourself as a DJ? Did you see yourself more as a curator, as a connector? Like, what was your goal before you got there?
That's a good question. So when I first started DJing, it was 2008. And that's not super long ago.
Yeah.
But
so much has happened, though.
So, well, one, so much has happened, but two, in the little bubble of like American dance, the little American history of dance music, that is kind of a long time ago.
Yes.
You know, we weren't raving in the 90s like Britain was. And you know, the people who were doing it were weirdos down in Florida, you know, the trance and break scene and all that.
Yeah.
It wasn't...
I was a weirdo in Minnesota doing a little bit, but it's not the same thing.
It wasn't a career path.
Oh, no.
You know? It wasn't... So when I started doing it, being a DJ was never like an option. It was just something that I did. I really loved it. When I first discovered like electro, I just wanted to play that music for other people. And, you know, learning to DJ was I never had any, I never was concerned about or interested in like learning how to scratch or learning tricks or any of the more, you know, any of the techniques of quote unquote the art of DJing. I was always more inspired by just sharing exciting new music with other people, because since I was 12, I had been organizing parties and events.
Okay.
And even when I was 12, I used to burn CDs off the radio and curate music. Like I would have a CD for like 8 o'clock and then a CD for 9 o'clock. And I like knew exactly what song I wanted to be playing at every point in the party when I was 12.
Oh my God.
And that was before I knew what a DJ was.
Yeah. We would have gotten along at that. I was doing very similar things.
So like, that was all I ever wanted to do, was just play music for people. But again, it was never like a career path. So it was always like, okay, well, what am I going to do for work, for money?
Right.
You know, like I come from a family, you know, my dad had like a regular job, you know? And so it was always just like I went to a regular university and it was always just expected that I would get a regular job.
Yeah.
And I didn't really fight that because I didn't really know any different, you know, being in Florida. So yeah, I came out here and it was like, okay, cool. Well, let me get a job that's at least tangentially related to DJing, right? I can, you know, help run this thing. And then being a DJ became like a big thing. And then it was kind of always eating away at a part of my heart that like, this was the thing that really started everything for me and made me so passionate. But yet I found myself spending a lot of my time kind of like making it happen for other people.
Right.
And not really, and no one forced me to, you know, I just didn't have the courage at the time. I didn't even realize this is what it was, but I was scared. I think a lot of people have a lot of fear and don't realize it or want to acknowledge that it's fear, but I had a lot of fear of failure. And so it was easier to just keep doing the job thing and get really buried in that and not try to make it on my own. And that started really eating away at me. And I had, shout out Durante. You should have him on this podcast. If anyone is listening, they probably know Durante. He's actually really starting to make waves for himself now. Durante came out here from Florida with me. He was like a little intern when I was working in Tim Smith's barn in Florida for the first year.
You were working in a barn?
So Tim...
Not to derail this whole thing.
Yeah. You can't just drop that, right?
Yeah.
Tim had like a makeshift office. I think he still does, in his backyard in Florida.
Okay.
You know, like internet, desks, computers. We ate lunch in there. Like it was a, you know, like a mobile, like Florida backyard office.
Station. Yeah.
So Durante was coming in there working with us and he came out to LA too. And he worked for the label for about a year. And then he went off to do his own thing. And I was so moved. He was like 3 years younger than me. He still is. And I was so moved by that and inspired by him. You know, he was making less money than me. Yeah. He was less stable than me. And he was newer to LA than me. But he's like, nah, like, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to make my own music. And like, all this work is distracting me from making my own music. So I'm just going to go make my own music. And, you know, it took him years to really hone his craft, but now he's done it. And now he's playing Space and he's playing in Electric Picnic and like, he's playing really cool places.
Right.
So yes, it was always about being a DJ.
Here's a question though. Do you think he ever looked at what you were doing and thought that you took the right path?
No.
You don't think so?
No. Durante's a pure artist.
Okay.
And he's the happiest I've ever seen him right now. Durante has also, he was a horrible intern. Durante, I love you.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's how I knew, right? He was horrible at like managing emails and like communicating. Right. He's just an artist.
Right.
And it's always been difficult for me because I'm like half and half.
Yeah.
You know? And in some ways, I think that it gives me an interesting set of like abilities to be able to work in, you know, labels or management and work directly with artists.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm too business-minded and organized to just like make music all day and not want to get on the phone and make things happen.
Right.
But I'm also kind of like too artistically minded to like look at emails too often. And I'm very conscious of the energy that stuff puts in my life. So that stuff was all kind of eating away at me. And 2017, I wanted to make a shift. I wanted to spend more of my time on focusing on my own stuff. Yeah. Focusing on the things that really, you know, the DJing, the thing that I told myself, this is the thing that I would do for no money. Right? That's how you know if you love something, if you would do it for no money. So what's the only thing in the world I would do for no money? I would DJ. So in 2017, it was a really hard decision, but it kind of like, I just had like an epiphany one day. I was listening to a lot of Alan Watts, lectures. And you know Alan Watts, like he's very into like Taoism, and just he has this very, very simple, matter-of-fact way of stating things that makes you feel absolutely ridiculous for thinking of them any other way.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And the clouds just parted, and I realized like, man, I gotta go. I gotta go try. I gotta go try to do this. And if I fail, I fail. And I had no plan. And I sold or gave away all my stuff. And I put everything I owned in a little carry-on suitcase. And I like traveled around Europe for a year, because that was like where all the music that I wanted to make and play was all coming from.
Right.
Like more underground, house and techno. And I felt like there was just this different energy in Europe where it wasn't about like big drops and like, cartoonish, charades on stage. It was more just about like a groove, like a long groove that like everyone shared and like, brought everyone together. And
of course, what was the conversation like leaving OWSLA? Do you think, were they surprised?
I don't know if they're surprised. Maybe, but I mean, they couldn't have been more supportive.
Yeah.
Like Tim, I think, was the first person I told, and Tim was just like, I think he was a little surprised, but he was so cool about it, man. He was so supportive, and he just made me feel really good. And obviously when I told Sonny, like that dude was the most supportive, he's like, bro, like I believe in you. Like I know you can do this. Like you're going to be amazing. And it was just a really great feeling to leave LA with those kind of sentiments from people. It was really encouraging. It just made me feel really good.
How did that mission go in Europe?
It never goes how you expect it to go.
Yeah.
So I was out there, I had been out there for about a month. I was living with a guy called Simon Astle, who had been doing our sync licensing for OWSLA, actually. He was based in London, really cool guy, really great understanding of music. He was a bit older than me. He had a flat and a spare room, and I stayed there for about a month. And, I was just like, I don't know what to do. I was like making mixes and like making an EPK and like DMing clubs on Instagram, like sending them like my mixes and stuff. And I never really had a strong inclination to make music. Again, it was always for me just about collecting it and sharing it.
Right.
And it in that day and age, it still is, even more so today, very difficult. That's not really a path anymore.
Yeah, I know.
It used to be a path.
I know.
You could just be a selector.
Right.
But now you have to make music, and it has to chart, and you have to have a whole Instagram persona. And
tell me about it.
So I was there. I did not immediately become a famous DJ overnight like I hoped.
Right.
Instead, Simon linked me with his business partner, a guy called Ben Turner, who anyone who's listening probably knows or has worked with or read about. Or I had known Ben. I actually met Ben. So Ben has managed Richie Houghton for about 12 years. Richie Houghton, for all the young dance heads, is one of the original pioneers of techno music.
Yeah, legend.
I think second wave from Detroit, like 89, 90. He was pioneering that kind of Detroit techno sound when I was in diapers.
Right, true legend.
So I met Ben and Richie in Ibiza, actually, with Sonny in like 2015, just like having dinner. Sonny and Richie have like a mutual respect. And that was my only time meeting Ben. And, I had kind of heard about, like his lore, like the folklore of Ben Turner.
Sure.
A year later, we spoke at his conference, IMS, in Shanghai. And I remember I was so anxious for like 2 weeks afterwards, because we all played Boiler Room the night before. And so for the panel, I was like really hurting. Like I was super hungover and I had drank a bunch of coffee before, and I was so nervous because like Pete Tong was moderating it, and like Ben Turner's here and he's like watching me. And I was just really unhappy with, I'm sure it was fine, but I was just really in my head about how I came off on the panel.
Yeah.
For like a month. I spent like a month being like, oh my God, Ben Turner thinks I'm the biggest knucklehead. And yeah, anyway, a few years later.
That's your artist side, by the way, because that's such an artist thing, is to, every time the performance is over, you're like, oh, that sucks.
It's all I do.
Yeah.
It's all I do. I never remember anything that I play when I DJ, because all I think about afterwards is the one time I did something that I wish I had done differently.
Yep. Every time, man.
Every time. I'm trying to get better at it. But anyway, I was really in my head about that. So fast forward to 2017, Simon linked me with Ben. Simon knew I was on this when I left the label, the other reason for leaving that lifestyle was that I wanted to DJ, but I wanted to do it in a way that was more sustainable and more compatible with a healthy lifestyle.
Right.
I found that the lifestyle I was living entailed staying up till 5 every night, waking up at 10, doing the label stuff, eating horrible food, smoking weed all the time, drinking like 4 or 5 nights a week. And it just I wasn't in good shape.
Yeah. Yeah, it can kind of put you in a dark place beyond, just beyond health. But I think too, when you're doing that sort of naturally, I don't know. When I'm in that kind of mode, which I'm not at all at this point in my life, but I wouldn't like the people I ended up hanging out with.
Yeah.
And it was almost like you sort of subconsciously put yourself in worse situations just because you knew you were kind of fucking up at the time.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is about self-love and self-care. And like, I very much didn't I thought I was just having fun because I'm 25. This is the time to do this. And I don't regret any of it.
Right.
But it started to catch up with me. And I started to not feel so good, and I started to have feel groggy in the morning, and then I needed coffee to make me feel better, and then I needed weed to make me sleep, and it was just this whole, where it became kind of scary that I needed anything to feel normal.
Right.
I didn't just feel normal naturally.
What about personality-wise? Because I remember on the panel we did together, you were saying that at a certain point, and I'm probably paraphrasing, but that you felt like it was like you somehow got some outside perspective on yourself, and you're like, who is that guy? I don't want to be that guy.
That came when I started meditating, which was a couple of years before this. That gave me the presence and the awareness to see a lot of things, but also probably to see myself and my own behavior and how I was acting towards other people and how I was being perceived, and none of these things were intentional.
Right.
But yeah, I think most people in their mid-20s have a lot of things they want to change about themselves.
100%, yeah.
Anyone who's listening to this is laughing because they're like, oh yeah, like I probably still have a lot of things that I should change about myself. Whatever, man, it's a journey.
Absolutely.
No one's perfect.
We're all getting there.
But very much I wanted to focus on DJing, but I had seen enough of like behind the curtain of the lifestyle to know that it actually would probably be more toxic. And especially like, touring with Skrillex is one thing. That's a certain way to tour. That's like how the 1% tour.
Yeah, it's a pretty nice way to tour.
Most people are not touring that way, especially in Europe where the fees are a lot lower and there's way more DJs. The average DJ life is like living on EasyJet flights 4 days out of the week. You maybe have a Sunday once a week to yourself. You're eating, Pret food in the airport, every day, lunch and dinner. There's celery sticks in the green room.
Yeah.
And you're lucky if you clear $50,000 a year after everyone's fees and taxes and everything.
Yeah. No, it's very workmanlike.
Yeah, so I knew that I didn't want to live that lifestyle because I knew that I also didn't want to be in the club till 8 o'clock in the morning. It didn't seem, it felt very much at that time like I was being made to choose between pursuing a DJ career and being healthy. And I was like, no, fuck that. Why would I have to, I don't want to choose between those two things. Like I want to have them both.
Yeah.
I want to figure out a way that I can do both. And that's kind of what I've been doing ever since.
Right.
So Simon linked me with Ben, who, again, we had already known each other, but Simon was like, you should talk to Ben. He's been talking about trying to incorporate more of a wellness angle into the IMS, which is the International Music Summit. He's also, as an artist manager for a long time, he's also now been noticing that there is a big mental health problem and there is a big problem with nutrition and sleep and all these things. And you guys should really talk. So we met in London that fall, and we hatched the concept for a Ayurvedic style retreat at the IMS in Ibiza the following spring. And I was just on cloud nine, like having an opportunity to work with Ben on something, but also it was really cool because it was right at the intersection of where I wanted to be. So that kind of led to a lot of the stuff now. I try to keep one foot in both lanes.
Right.
I never wanted to leave music and become like a doctor or anything, but I also really geek out on all of the health and human potential and spirituality stuff that is out there. And I think there's a lot of natural intersections between that and music.
Well, I agree. And so, maybe to drill down into that two-part question. First of all, let's talk about what you're doing now. Like, explain it for the people, give the little pitch. And secondly, what I want to talk about that I find really interesting about what you're doing is that it is focused on artists, right? As opposed to a different career. And I'm curious, how you and Ben and all the people you work with sort of approach that, and maybe how that would differ from, say, self-help or therapy or care for, someone in a different world.
Yeah. So the retreat, we originally launched it as Remedy State. We're now transitioning to a name, Arete, Arete, which is a ancient Greek concept meaning excellence through self-actualization. It's actually tattooed on my wrist. And I've had this tattoo since the Groove Shark days.
Is that right?
That was when someone first pointed out. I was like, how come I have a job and I'm making money, but I'm still sad? And my friend was a philosophy major, and he was like, "'Cause there's more to life than money. Like, check out this Greek stuff. There's this whole concept of self-actualization, of like being the best you can be, and pushing yourself to your limits, and you're not doing that, so it feels like you're stagnating." And I was like, "I'm gonna get that tattooed on me. I want to never forget that." So yeah, the reason for the name change was that we originally launched this retreat as sort of a remedy, right? We both realized that there was a big systemic problem in the industry centered on the lifestyle of not just the DJ, but the music industry professional, right? It's constant travel, irregular sleep, lack of sleep, poor nutrition, constantly being surrounded by drinks and drugs and socially toxic behaviors, ego-obsessed personalities, Instagram followers and chart positions and festival billings and never seeing your family and, worrying about what people are saying about you in the press, being a public figure, having to constantly every day question your own relevance. It's a real unique set of challenges that artists and entertainers face. And I don't just mean musicians. I mean, we always from the beginning set out to solve this problem for artists and musicians, but also athletes and actors and, any manner of entertainers, dancers, people who are public figures.
Right.
So the concept started off as, let's bring in some of these, really world-class doctors and healers and thinkers and practitioners and authors to educate our industry about nutrition and sleep and exercise and mindfulness and physical therapy and breath work and yoga and all that. And after the first year, it was a great success, and I was really blown away by, no one had done anything like this before in the dance music industry, especially not at a conference in Ibiza. So we were both really encouraged by the turnout and by the impact that I think that people told us that it had on their lives. And we got a lot of really great support from people like Mark Grotfeld at Pioneer DJ, Help Musicians UK. And it just was like, okay, let's do this. But coming out of it, we realized the remedy part of it was only half of the equation.
Okay.
Right? That's in some ways, you're fixing a deficiency need where someone is not eating properly or not sleeping properly. That's a problem that needs to be fixed. But even if you fix all those problems, that alone is not going to bring you fulfillment. That alone is not going to make you happy. And that alone is not going to make you feel like you've lived a life worth living. Right? It still doesn't solve that second part of it. It's what is life about? What am I doing? What drives me? What makes me feel alive? And that was where we started really getting into this, the whole idea of human potential and the human potential movement. The human potential movement, I encourage everyone to go Google it. I mean, earlier this year got to spend time at the Esalen Institute upstate in California. That was kind of the place in the 60s where people like Eckhart Tolle and Alan Watts and even Abraham Maslow, Carl Jung, forefathers of modern day psychology were living and studying in the 60s. And they were Alan Watts was bringing ideas of Taoism and Zen Buddhism to the West, to America. And this, in a lot of ways, underscored the whole hippie movement in San Francisco in the 60s. So Ben and I both got really into human potential and how these things, nutrition, sleep, exercise, etc., could create a foundation, but you still had to stand on that foundation and reach for something. So that's where the name Arete came in, because it was about, okay, well, how can we now expose people to things like Chinese martial arts and ecstatic dance and things that actually helped you to break through blocks, break through fear, connect with other people, express yourself more freely. And then we really got into, okay, this is not just about helping people manage their diet or improve their sleep. The mental health component is extremely important.
Yeah.
But again, all of those things are just things that need to be fixed. And once you fix them, then what? Well, then you want to express yourself. You want to create. You want to do something.
Right.
Not everyone's an artist. Maybe you want to create a business. Maybe you want to create a restaurant. Maybe you want to create, architecture. So that's kind of very much the focus of where we're at now, right? Is helping to expose the industry to methods for managing their own, not only health, but human potential and creativity and personal development and all those things that make life, life.
Yeah, yeah. And I think too, I like that you kind of realized there were multiple components to that kind of self-care, right? Because, sometimes in the process of fixing some issue in your life, that is how new opportunities arise, right? Because if you change your perspective or you change the way you do something, all of a sudden you see other parts of your life in a different light.
Yeah.
And so, I like that, because then, and exactly what you said, then once you do see that new light or you do see a new opportunity, you do want to have the, whatever it is, it's just the balls to go do it. And it's two different things.
But it's all also very interrelated. The more that I've, and I geek out really hard on this stuff, but I probably I have 6 doctors, and I probably talk to them more than I talk to my friends. Mostly because I'm just paying them to ask them questions.
Right, of course. It's just financially
I'm just
sound.
really interested. Yeah. All of these things are interrelated. The more and more I learn about these things, the more I realize that, for example, sugar, right, breaks down into a yeast called candida in the body. Candida has a specific energetic frequency, and that energetic frequency has specific emotions that are tied to it. And those specific emotions are, for example, inadequacy, anxiety, feeling like you're, incapable of getting something done. You're not, smart enough, strong enough, good enough. You just feel really low.
I do love sugar.
And I've always loved sugar, man. I've always eaten a ton of sugar. And I've also always dealt with those feelings.
Right. That's...
And it wasn't until my Chinese medicine doctor put me up on the fact that those things were causing those feelings that I realized, this is just one example, how your nutrition can influence your mental health. And then conversely, your mental health can also obviously affect your nutrition.
Of course.
We've all been really sad about a breakup and, not been able to eat because, and there's a scientific explanation for that, right? Your body and your emotions are triggering a fight or flight response, and it's, preventing your digestion from really, kicking in. And what I'm trying to say is I realized all the things are related. And, for a lot of people, this is my thing now. This is my big, message platform right now is mental health is without a doubt a big, big epidemic in the world and also more acutely in the arts and entertainment industry. Now, it's easy to write off mental health, and I think it's very limiting to write mental health off as something that some people have because they were born that way and they're just broken. Right. About 20% of cases of mental health, when you're talking about things like anxiety, depression, about 20% of those cases are biological and require pharmacological or chemical intervention, right? You have something's not firing right in your brain. The other 80% of those cases are socially and environmentally caused. And I really believe that in our industry, it's this obsession. It's this egoic obsession with what people call external values.
Sure.
Right? It happens the minute that you cross the boundary, the minute that you cross over the divide from playing the piano because you enjoy it to playing the piano because you want people to think you're good at it.
Yeah.
And you want to be adored and you want to be famous and you want to make money. And then all of a sudden, everything becomes about that. And you can never have enough of that. I've never met anyone who's satisfied with their amount of Instagram followers.
Well, I want you to speak to this because I think in the position you've been in throughout your career, you've probably seen this more than a lot of people, just because you've seen tons of high status artists or celebrities or whatever, just been in the same room with them by nature of your work. And I have to imagine no level of success or fame is enough to fix that feeling, right?
No, the higher up they get, the more terrified they are. Because you have more to lose.
Right.
And because there's bigger shoes to fill the next day. And you had a number 4 record. How are you going to top that? Now you have to have a number 3 record. They're like quicksand. These external values, they're desires. They're not needs. They're false needs, you know?
That's a great way to put it.
I think Maslow used to call them that, false needs. They're things like quicksand that once you have a little bit of them, you want more. Cars, clothes, money, whatever.
Right.
There's never enough. You get yourself into a situation where then you're in rehab. And that's unfortunately where a lot of people, especially in our industry, finally learn that lesson. One of my biggest idols is Russell Brand, right? Look at his story. He just overdid it. Like, he was in a situation where he could have all the drugs, drink, women, party, men, whatever he wanted. Sure. He could have it ad infinitum, and it eventually realized it wasn't getting him anywhere.
Yeah.
So, the thing that I think is the most important is, yes, it's important to take care of yourself. Yes, it's important. You got to eat clean. You got to sleep, because obviously you're never going to feel good if you're not taking good care of yourself. But I really, really want to encourage everyone in our industry to really stop and think about where we are placing our values. I'm so disenfranchised by, the competition. Oh, this person's growing faster than me. They've got more followers than me. What are they doing now on their channel? It's not healthy. Yeah. Dance music was founded by marginalized sociocultural groups as a way for them to A, express themselves, B, connect with each other, C, serve humanity. Those are the 3 things. Those are the soul desires. Those are the 3 things, self-expression, connection, and service, that are going to make you feel good. Those are the 3 things that are going to make you feel like you lived a good life when you're on your deathbed. Those are the things that are going to make you happy. All the stuff before that, money, look at, Maslow's hierarchy of needs: shelter, survival, safety, all this. Yes, these things are needs. Yes, they're important. But once you have them, it's time to move on. People, I think, get trapped in this loop of, they get stuck at like the money level. Right. They get enough money to survive, but then it's like, oh, well, but I need more, because that person has 2 Teslas and I only have 1.
You're right.
My friend's dad knows, what's his name? Mark Cuban. Okay. And he tells me how Mark Cuban sits around with the owner of the New York Jets. I forget the guy's name, but they're like good friends. Yeah. And Mark Cuban's teasing him all the time because he's only worth $1 billion and Mark's worth $7 billion. And this is real shit. Yeah, no, of course. People with this insane amount of money like really obsess about this shit. Of course. And it's sickening.
It's never enough. It's never enough.
And that's all I'm trying to say to people in dance music, people in any music, man. Like, let's just remember, we're doing what we love. We're expressing ourselves creatively as a living. Yeah. And if we're making a living doing that and not dying and not living on the streets and able to live another day, like, we've won. Don't let them tell you that we're different. Don't let them tell you that it's a competition. That's all bullshit. that's why people are becoming so depressed.
Yeah, man. And one of the 3 tent poles you just mentioned was being of service, right? And maybe that's a good way to now come back to social causes and to talk a little bit about the label that you're doing. And I don't have a great segue for it because I just found out about it. But what is it? What are you up to, man?
Yeah, man. So this is not my label. I'm doing a bit of work with we haven't even launched it yet. So I think when this airs, I don't know if there's even going to be anything online, but the label's called Guin, like a penguin without the pen.
Yeah.
Label was launched by some pretty interesting people, including a guy called Michael Bearden, who some of you real heads may know. Michael was originally Madonna's music director, then Michael Jackson's music director.
Wow.
Now Lady Gaga's music director.
That's a pretty fucking big resume.
This guy knows music.
Yeah.
So I got linked with these people at the beginning of this year, and it was really interesting to me. I mean, to be honest, I was really not in the market to work at a record label anytime soon. Like it's just a lot.
Yeah.
And especially with what I told you about wanting to focus on my own stuff. And, you know, I also just didn't really, you know, I said, I think what a lot of people would say, right? Which is, why does the world need a record label? Mm-hmm. You know, everyone has a record label. Like,
yes.
What problem is this record label going to solve? And from the very first time I met the founders, you know, they're very young, and they really love hip hop, and they're old enough to know about like when hip hop was good, but young enough to not be tainted by the industry and still have a really beautiful, pure vision for what can be accomplished through music, and, you know, have the resources to actually empower lyrical, purpose-driven artists who deserve it, who want to make the world a better place, and who are good people, not just good rappers. So that was really interesting to me, and I came on board initially as like an A&R consultant, and I was doing some creative direction. And, you know, that sort of picked up as the label started moving, and, you know, I got more and more inspired, and I think we started to develop a bit of a chemistry, and my role sort of started to expand. And now we've got a fiery little team of 4 or 5 people. And we've signed our first 2 artists, a guy called Sylvan LeCue from here in Santa Monica. People may be familiar with him. He's been in the game for a minute, Sylvan. And then even younger cat called LB 1990X from DC, who again, some people may know, but he's also still very much coming up. And one of the things, you know, the reason I get so excited and the reason I'm so engaged with this label right now is they've really helped, you know, collaboratively, we've all sort of created this platform to espouse a lot of these values that I'm talking about, right? Like, we're all totally on the same page. The mission of this label is to develop the collective consciousness through storytelling and music, you know? For example, from day one, I said, hey, we should give our artists $400 a month just to take care of their health needs, to go get therapy and to join a gym and to do whatever. And they're like, cool, done.
Ooh, I like this.
Yeah, and we made that non-recoupable, so they don't have to pay it back, you know, because it's about building them as people. I really believe that the best way to develop your art is to develop yourself.
Wow. We
treat artists like whole people, you know? You know, I hang out with them. We read, like, we share books. Like, they're my friends now.
Right.
We very much don't look at them like products. You know, we have a whole code. Like, our artists always retain ownership of their masters. You know, they're always compensated for their wellness services. We always do 50-50 net profit split deals. It's just a really fair label that really puts people at the heart of it. And it's really about trying to make the world a better place. And so one of the other things that we have sort of set out from the get-go was that every artist that we sign is going to align with a social cause. And so far we found that a lot of them come in and it's not hard. They already have sort of something in mind that they're passionate about, just because our scouting has been really good and we've been able to really identify people who are incredibly talented, but also incredible people.
Right.
So for example, LB 1990X, he said, well, growing up, I always used to play sports at the Boys and Girls Club. My mom worked at the concession stand, and it was just like a really important part of my character development as a young person, playing sports at the Boys and Girls Club. And, now I go there and, the equipment could use an update, the facilities aren't in such great shape. And he's like, I would really like to help them, so we're making that happen now. We went through some of our connections and got a good introduction to someone at the corporate level at the Boys and Girls Club. And, everything that LB puts out now on the label will support the Boys and Girls Club. So yeah, that's kind of like you said, how to put that cherry on top. Obviously, we're creating a forum for self-expression. Obviously, we're helping connect people through the music, but it still has to be of service. And all music is of service. Music makes the world an incredible place.
Yep.
It gives people a reason to wake up in the morning.
Yep.
It would suck without it.
I mean, what would we be doing, man?
Yeah. So but it's really, really rewarding to work with people like that who are making the world a better place in a more tangible way like that.
Yeah, man.
Not just through dance and having fun.
I'm excited to see what you do with that, man. Would you say that's your focus right now? What are you most excited about and it doesn't even have to be about business shit, but like, what's fun for you? What's exciting for you right now?
Over the past year, I've been super busy. Over the past year, I have done some A&R consulting for Native Instruments, helped them launch the sounds.com campaign with Diplo. I've done some consulting so Ben Turner and I started working together after the retreat. I started also working with him on Richie Houghton, which was also incredible, right? Because again, this guy's a legend.
Yeah.
And it was really cool to get to sort of see how that world, the very underground European, like Berlin, Detroit, techno kind of world operates. That was really inspiring. Obviously, Ben's a super inspiring guy. As far as my focus right now, what's my focus right now?
What's that?
I just came up on the very last TR-09 in the entire Roland inventory.
Damn.
And I'm about to make some beats on that motherfucker.
That's crazy.
What's that one sample? What's the dude? I'm totally blanking. Not Joe Classell. Maybe it's Joe Classell.
I don't even know.
Joe Classell or... he just did a fucking Art of DJing on Resident Advisor.
I think I remember seeing that and not clicking it. I'm not going to remember who it was.
Anyway, some people get home at night and they fuck their wife. Some people get home at night and they watch TV. Me, I get home at night and I take out my motherfucking drum machine and I fuck that motherfucking drum machine all fucking night. That's my focus right now.
I love that, man. I love that. That's great. Well, man, I want to keep doing this, but I think I have to go to LAX. Yeah. Where you just came from.
I just came back from there. Yeah.
Which is amazing. I'm really happy we were able to do this. Before we go, is there anything we haven't talked about? Anything else you want to get out there? Anything that's on your mind? Anything at all?
Stay off the sugar. Put your own oxygen mask on before assisting others.
That's good. That's actually really good advice for me, both pieces.
Stop caring so much about what the world thinks.
I love it, man. Final question. Just a memory in your life when, in a moment, music really meant something to you, really deeply affected you. Just the first memory that pops into your head. I
grew up in Atlanta. In the 90s, when like just after like Biggie and Pac died, the Dirty South like hip hop movement was the thing. Yeah, it's a revolution. And I was living in Atlanta at a time when Ludacris was still the DJ on Hot 97. And obviously this is before streaming and before, you could get songs on the internet. So every night every night on Ludacris used to go by Chris Lova Lova, and every night on the Chris Lova Lova show from 6 to 10, they would play some hot fire. And like, you didn't always know what that hot fire was, nor could you just like go get it on the internet. So every night I would keep the tape deck rolling from like 6 p.m. And when it would run out, I'd put a new tape in there just in case they played anything hot. Then I had it. And then if I had it, then I would dub it over onto another tape over and over and over. So I had a full tape of just the same song over and over and over. And I would just listen to it all week until I got sick of it and then find a new one the next week. That's amazing. Yeah, that's my first memory of of music.
Yeah, and really being passionate about collecting it and, digging through it, leafing through the songs, right?
Yeah, and I was a...
Because that sounds a lot like what you do now, right?
Yeah. And just the other day, someone was over here and he was like, what'd you do today? And I was like, I spent like 5 hours trying to find this one song that isn't out anywhere.
Right.
It's like Pokemon to me.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, it's as a 10-year-old white kid in Atlanta, it's not, I would love to say that it was because I really related to the messages and the energy in the hip hop music, but it was more so just about because I was moved by it. And it had a very, punk, rebellious kind of spirit. That's one thing that rock, hip hop, and good dance all kind of share.
Yes.
Is like a middle finger to like everyone else. Like, we're going to do things our own way. And I think that's probably what I was moved by, was that in hip hop. And later I found that same thing in dance music. So,
right.
Life could be worse. I'm right now working across hip hop, dance, and human potential. Yeah.
Is there still that rebellious part too?
Fuck
Are you
yeah,
still
man.
looking for that?
Fuck everyone. I'm just kidding. I love you.
I love you too, man. This has been fun.
You're the man, bro.
All right, man. Peace. All right, that's the show. Shout out to Blaise. Love you, man. That was so fun. I'm glad we got to do that before I had to run off to the airport. I'm going to put a link in the description of this episode where you can go keep up with everything that Blaise is doing, follow him on social media, all that good stuff. He's always setting the tone, man, so keep an eye out for what he's got coming up. My name is Willy Joy. You can always keep up with me too. backtobackpod@gmail.com. That's the email address. Or you can hit me up at Willy Joy or at backtobackpod on all social media. That's it for this week. I hope you have a good one. Happy November. Go out there, kill it this week. Whatever you're trying to accomplish, I got you. You can do this. I believe in you. You're great. You're attractive. I don't know what you want to hear, but I feel like all the listeners out there, you're my people. I know we connect, so I know you're going to be good, and I will talk to you next week. For Back to Back, this is Willy Joy. Peace.